Marcus Chen thought installing solar panels would save his family money. Instead, it destroyed his life. The HOA claimed his panels were blinding drivers and causing accidents. But when Marcus hired a private investigator to prove his innocence, what they uncovered about the HOA president's secret dealings would shake the entire neighborhood to its core. Some battles aren't about solar panels. They're about power, corruption, and the lengths people will go to protect their darkest secrets. The November sun cast long shadows across Willowbrook Estates as Marcus Chen stood on his driveway, watching. The solar installation crew secured the last panel to his roof. 24 gleaming rectangles now adorned the south-facing slope of his modest two-story home, each one representing a small victory against the crushing weight of his family's medical bills. "That should do it, Mr. Chen," called out Jake Martinez, the crew chief, as he climbed down from the ladder. "Systems ready to go live tomorrow morning. You're looking at about 30% reduction in your monthly electric bill, maybe more." During peak summer months, Marcus nodded, feeling a mix of relief and anticipation. The $28,000 investment had nearly emptied their savings, but with his wife Sarah's ongoing cancer treatments, every dollar saved was a dollar that could go toward keeping her alive. "The panels won't be too reflective, will they?" Marcus asked. Suddenly conscious of the way they caught the afternoon light. "I don't want to bother the neighbors." Jake shook his head. "These are anti-reflective coated, standard industry practice. You'll get less glare than you would from a regular window." As the installation crew packed up their equipment, Marcus's neighbor from across the street, Mrs. Eleanor Vance, emerged from her pristine colonial home. At 72, she moved with the purposeful stride of someone accustomed to getting her way. Her silver hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her thin lips were pressed into a disapproving line. "Mr. Chen," she called out, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had chaired the Willowbrook Estates Homeowners Association for the past 8 years. "I trust you obtained proper approval for this, addition." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "I submitted the application 6 weeks ago, Mrs. Vance. It was approved." "Was it?" She pulled out her phone, tapping through emails with practiced efficiency. "I'm showing here that your application was marked as pending review by the Architectural Committee. Nothing about approval." "That's impossible." Marcus pulled out his own phone, scrolling to the email from the HOA management company. "Right here, application 2024-CO47 has been approved pending compliance with county permits and safety regulations. I have all the permits." Mrs. Vance's eyes narrowed as she studied his screen. "This appears to be from our previous management company. We terminated their contract 3 weeks ago due to irregularities in their processes. I'm afraid any approvals they issued are null and void." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying those panels need to come down until you go through the proper approval process with our new management company." She gestured toward his roof with distaste. "And frankly, Mr. Chen, I have serious concerns about the safety implications of such a large installation. The glare from those panels could easily blind passing drivers." Jake, who had been loading equipment into his truck, looked up sharply. "Ma'am, with respect, these panels are specifically designed to minimize reflection. They're actually less reflective than most roofing materials." "Are you a resident of Willowbrook Estates?" Mrs. Vance asked coldly. "No, ma'am. But I am a certified solar installer. Then your opinion is irrelevant." She turned back to Marcus. "Mr. Chen, you have 72 hours to remove this installation, or the HOA will be forced to take legal action." Marcus felt the world spin slightly. "Mrs. Vance, please. My wife is undergoing chemotherapy. These panels are going to save us hundreds of dollars a month that we desperately need for her treatment." Something flickered across Mrs. Vance's face, not sympathy, but something harder to read. "I'm sorry about your wife's condition, truly. But personal circumstances don't supersede community standards. The HOA exists to protect property values for all residents." "The panels are completely legal," Marcus said, his voice rising slightly. "I have county permits, city permits, utility company approval, but not HOA approval," Mrs. Vance interrupted. "And per Section 4.7 of our CC&RS, any exterior modifications require written approval from the Architectural Committee before installation. The penalties for non-compliance are quite severe." Marcus had read the CC and arrest the covenant's conditions and restrictions that governed their neighborhood multiple times before moving in 3 years ago. He knew the rules, which was why he'd submitted his application well in advance. "I did everything by the book," he said quietly. "The book changed," Mrs. Vance replied. "The new management company has implemented much stricter standards. For good reason, we've already received 2 complaints about the glare from your panels. That's impossible. They were just installed today." Mrs. Vance's smile was thin and cold. "Were they? According to my records, installation began yesterday. Mrs. Rodriguez from Pine Street called this morning to report that she was nearly blinded by the reflection while driving to work. And Mr. Patterson from Elm Avenue said the glare was so intense it gave him a headache just looking in this direction." Marcus felt his chest tighten. "That's not. Those people are making that up. Are you calling your neighbors liars, Mr. Chen?" The question hung in the air between them like a loaded weapon. Marcus looked at his house, at the panels that represented hope for his family's future, then back at the woman who seemed determined to destroy that hope. "I'm saying those panels were installed today," he said carefully. "Any complaints about glare from yesterday are physically impossible." Mrs. Vance's expression didn't change. "I have sworn affidavits from both residents. Perhaps you'd like to explain the discrepancy to a judge." Jake stepped forward, his tablet in hand. "Actually, ma'am, I can clear this up. We document everything: timestamps, GPS coordinates. Installation began at 7:30 this morning and concluded at 3:45 p.m. today. I can provide you with a complete timeline if needed." "Young man," Mrs. Vance said, her voice dripping with condescension, "I don't care what your little tablet says. I have signed statements from longtime residents of this community, people whose word carries weight." Marcus felt something snap inside him. "You're lying." The words came out louder than he'd intended, and Mrs. Vance's face flushed red. "Excuse me. You're lying about the complaints. You're lying about the approval process. You're lying about everything." Marcus took a step closer, his hands clenched at his sides. "The question is why? Mr. Chen, I suggest you calm down before you say something you'll regret." "I regret moving to this neighborhood," Marcus shot back. "I regret paying HOA fees to someone who clearly has nothing better to do than harass families who are already struggling." Mrs. Vance's eyes glittered with something that might have been satisfaction. "I'm documenting this conversation, Mr. Chen. Your hostile attitude and baseless accusations will be included in the formal complaint we're filing." "Document this," Marcus said, his voice shaking with rage. "I'm not taking down those panels. They're legal, they're approved, and they're staying up. Then you'll be hearing from our attorney." Mrs. Vance turned and walked away, her heels clicking. On the pavement, with military precision, Marcus watched her go, his heart pounding. Behind him, Jake cleared his throat. "Mr. Chen, I've been doing this for 12 years. I've seen HOA disputes before, but this ... double quotes, he shook his head. "This feels different, personal." "What do you mean?" "Most HOA complaints are about aesthetics or minor rule violations. But she came out here locked and loaded fake complaints, retroactive rule changes, threats of legal action. It's like she was waiting for you to install these panels so she could attack." Marcus looked back at his house, where the panels gleamed innocently in the fading sunlight. Through the living room window, he could see Sarah resting on the couch, her head wrapped in a colorful scarf to hide the hair loss from chemotherapy. She looked so fragile, so tired. "I can't afford a legal battle," he said quietly. Jake nodded. "But you can't afford to back down either. Look, I know a investigator who specializes in HOA fraud. If something fishy is going on here, he'll find it. I don't have money for a private investigator. First consultation is free. Just talk to him, get his read on the situation." Jake handed Marcus a business card. Sometimes the best defense is a good offense. That evening, Marcus sat at his kitchen table with a stack of documents spread before him. The original HOA approval email, his permits, the installation contracts, and Jake's time-stamped photos. Sarah sat across from him, her face pale but determined. "We're not backing down," she said firmly. "Those panels represent hope for our finances, for our future, for our kids' college funds." Marcus looked at the business card Jake had given him. David Reeves, private investigator, specializing in corporate fraud and HOA disputes. "Call him," Sarah said. "If Mrs. Vance wants a fight, we'll give her one." Marcus dialed the number. It rang twice before a gravelly voice answered, "Reeves Investigations." "Mr. Reeves, this is?" "Marcus Chen, I got your number from Jake Martinez. I need help with an HOA situation." David Reeves arrived at the Willowbrook Estates Community Center at exactly 9 a.m., his weathered face and rumpled jacket making him look more like a retired mechanic than a private investigator. Marcus had expected someone more polished, but the steady intelligence in Reeves' gray eyes suggested depths that appearance couldn't measure. "Before we go in there," Reeves said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses, "I need you to understand something. HOA meetings are theater. Everyone's playing a role. Your job is to stay calm, document everything, and let them hang themselves with their own rope." Marcus nodded, though his stomach churned with anxiety. The emergency HOA meeting had been called for 9:15 a.m., barely 12 hours after Mrs. Vance's ultimatum. The speed alone suggested this was orchestrated. "What am I looking for?" Marcus asked. "Inconsistencies? Lies? People who can't keep their story straight?" Reeves pulled out a small digital recorder. "This is legal in Pennsylvania as long as one party you consents to the recording. Keep it in your pocket. Press record when we walk in." The community center buzzed with an unusual level of activity for a Tuesday morning. Marcus recognized most of the faces neighbors he'd waved to for 3 years, people whose dogs he'd petted, whose children had played with his kids. But today, their expressions ranged from uncomfortable to openly hostile. Mrs. Vance sat at the front table with 2 other board members, Tom Bradley, a retired bank manager who usually seemed reasonable, and Janet Morrison, a real estate agent who'd sold Marcus his house. Beside them sat a younger man in an expensive suit, his silver hair perfectly styled, his smile practiced and cold. "That's the new management company representative," Reeves murmured. "Richard Blackwood from Pinnacle Property Management. Interesting choice. They usually handle commercial properties, not residential HOAs." Mrs. Vance called the meeting to order with theatrical precision. "We're here to address a serious safety violation that threatens the well-being of our entire community. Mr. Chen has installed an unauthorized solar panel system that has already caused multiple incidents." Marcus started to object, but Reeves placed a restraining hand on his arm. "Mrs. Rodriguez, would you please share your experience?" Mrs. Vance continued. A nervous-looking woman in her 50s stood up. Marcus knew her by sight. She lived on Pine Street, 3 blocks away. "Yesterday morning, around 7:30, I was driving to work when this intense flash of light hit my windshield. It was so bright I couldn't see the road. I nearly crashed into a parked car." "Thank you, Mrs. Rodriguez." Mr. Patterson, an elderly man with a cane, rose slowly. "Same thing happened to me. I was walking my dog around 8 a.m. when the glare from those panels was so bad I got dizzy. Had to sit down on the sidewalk until my vision cleared." Marcus felt Reeves tense beside him. The investigator was taking notes, but his expression suggested he was hearing something important. "But the safety issue is only part of our concern. Mr. Chen installed these panels without proper HOA approval, in direct violation of our architectural standards." "I have approval," Marcus said, standing up. "I submitted my application 6 weeks ago and received written confirmation." Richard Blackwood cleared his throat. "Mr. Chen, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. The previous management company, Sunset Properties, was terminated due to irregularities in their approval process. We've discovered numerous unauthorized approvals that were issued without proper board oversight." "That's convenient," Marcus said, his voice rising. "You fire the company that approved my installation and then claim the approval doesn't count." "Mr. Chen," Mrs. Vance said sharply, "your hostile attitude isn't helping your case. We're trying to resolve this matter amicably. By forcing me to tear down panels I legally installed." Tom Bradley leaned forward. "Marcus, I understand you're upset, but we have to consider the safety of the entire community. Maybe we can work out a compromise: modified panels that don't create glare, or panels positioned differently on your roof." It was a reasonable suggestion, but Mrs. Vance quickly shot it down. "The Architectural Committee has determined that solar panels of any kind are incompatible with our community standards. They detract from property values and create maintenance issues." "Since when?" asked Jennifer Walsh, a young mother who lived 2 streets over. "The CC&Rs don't prohibit solar panels. I checked before I moved in because I was considering them myself." Mrs. Vance's smile was razor-thin. The CC and Rs are a living document, Mrs. Walsh. They evolve to meet the changing needs of our community. You can't just change the rules retroactively, Jennifer protested. That's not how contracts work. Richard Blackwood stood up smoothly. Actually, Section 12.3 of your CC and RS grants the board broad authority to interpret and modify architectural standards as needed. It's perfectly legal. Reeves made another note, and Marcus caught him shaking his head slightly. Let me ask you something, Marcus said, his voice carefully controlled. Mrs. Rodriguez, you said you were nearly blinded by the glare yesterday. At 7:30 a.m., that's right. And Mr. Patterson, you said the same thing happened around 8 a.m. Yes. Marcus pulled out his phone and showed them Jake's time-stamped photos. These photos show that installation didn't begin until 7:30 a.m. yesterday. The first panel wasn't mounted until after 9 a.m. So how exactly did you see glare from panels that weren't installed yet? The room fell silent. Mrs. Rodriguez's face went pale, and Mr. Patterson suddenly found his shoes very interesting. Perhaps they were mistaken about the timing, Mrs. Vance said quickly. The important thing is that they experienced dangerous glare. From panels that didn't exist, Marcus pressed. Unless you're suggesting my neighbors are lying under oath, nobody's under oath here, Richard Blackwood interjected. This is an informal community meeting, not a court proceeding. But you're threatening legal action based on false testimony, Reeves said, speaking for the first time. I'm David Reeves, private investigator. I'm here representing Mr. Chen, and I have to say, this whole process raises serious questions about the HOA's good faith. Mrs. Vance's composure cracked slightly. Who are you to question our good faith? This is a private HOA matter. It became my matter when you started fabricating evidence, Reeves replied calmly. I've been recording this entire meeting, and I have to say the timeline discrepancies are quite interesting. Almost as interesting as the sudden change in management. Companies right after Mr. Chen's installation, we fired Sunset Properties for cause, Richard Blackwood said. Their approval process was sloppy and legally questionable. Really? Reeves pulled out a folder. Because I spoke to Sunset Properties this morning. They say they were fired without cause, after refusing to retroactively revoke several approvals that had already been issued, including Mr. Chen's. The room erupted in murmurs. Mrs. Vance banged her gavel sharply. This meeting is about Mr. Chen's violation, not about management company decisions. Actually, Jennifer Walsh said, standing up again, I think we should hear more about this. If the board is retroactively changing approvals, that affects all of us. I second that, called out another voice. Marcus turned to see Bob Martinez, an electrician who lived on Maple Street. I've got a deck addition approved by Sunset Properties. Are you saying that's invalid now too? Mrs. Vance's face was flushed. That's different. Mr. Chen's installation poses a safety risk. Based on false testimony, Reeves said quietly. Mrs. Rodriguez, Mr. Patterson, I'd like to ask you both a question. Who approached you about testifying against Mr. Chen? Both residents shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Rodriguez glanced at Mrs. Vance, who gave her a sharp look. I don't remember exactly, Mrs. Rodriguez stammered. Let me help you remember, Reeves said, consulting his notes. Was it Mrs. Vance, or perhaps Mr. Blackwood? Or maybe someone else entirely? This is harassment, Mrs. Vance snapped. I'm calling a recess. Actually, Tom Bradley said, looking troubled, I think we should answer these questions. If there are irregularities in this process, the board needs to know about them. Mrs. Vance shot him a venomous look. Tom, you're out of line. No, Eleanor. I don't think I am. Bradley turned to face the room. I've been on this board for 5 years, and I've never seen anything like this. Emergency meetings, retroactive rule changes, testimony that doesn't add up. It's not how we do business. Mr. Bradley, Richard Blackwood said smoothly, perhaps we should discuss this in executive session. Why? Bradley asked. If everything's above board, what's the problem with discussing it openly? Mrs. Vance stood up abruptly. This meeting is adjourned. We'll reconvene next week after the board has had time to review all the relevant documentation. What documentation? Marcus asked. You still haven't shown me a single document that proves my approval was invalid. Mr. Chen, Mrs. Vance said, her voice ice-cold, you have 48 hours to remove those panels or face a lawsuit. That's final. As the meeting dissolved into chaos, with residents arguing among themselves and board members huddling in tense conversation, Reeves guided Marcus toward the exit. "Well, that was educational," the investigator said once they were outside. "Educational. How they're still threatening to sue me." "Marcus, that wasn't a legitimate HOA meeting. That was a badly orchestrated cover-up." Reeves flipped through his note. The Cumberland County Planning Office occupied a squat brick building that smelled of old coffee and bureaucratic frustration. Marcus sat across from Planning Director James Hoffman, watching the man's expression grow increasingly grim as he scrolled through development applications on his computer. "This is unusual," Hoffman said finally, adjusting his thick glasses. "I've been doing this job for 23 years, and I've never seen anything quite like this. What did you find?" Hoffman turned his monitor so Marcus could see the screen. Meridian Development, LLC, filed a preliminary application 6 months ago for a mixed-use development called Willowbrook Commons, shopping center, office buildings, luxury condos. The projected value is $47 million. Marcus felt his breath catch. Where exactly? That's the problem. The proposed site encompasses the entire Willowbrook Estates neighborhood. All 127 homes would need to be demolished. The room seemed to spin. Marcus gripped the edge of the desk. "That's impossible. You can't just demolish an entire neighborhood. You can if the residents sell voluntarily. Eminent domain is difficult and expensive, but if homeowners can be ... encouraged ... to sell, it becomes a straightforward business transaction." Encouraged. How? Hoffman's expression darkened. "The application includes detailed demographic analysis, property values, and this is the unusual PARTA section on resident compliance factors. It specifically identifies homeowners who might be resistant to selling. Am I on that list? You're number 1. The report describes you as higher risk non-compliance due to recent major investment in property improvements and family medical expenses, creating financial pressure to remain in current location." Marcus felt sick. "They've been watching us. It gets worse." The application includes a timeline showing projected acquisition of properties over 18 months. 3 houses have already been purchased, all at below market prices, after the owners faced extended HOA disputes. So Mrs. Vance is working. With them, I can't prove that legally, but... Hoffman pulled up another screen. "Eleanor Vance owns a consulting company called Neighborhood Transition Services. 3 months ago, Meridian Development paid her company $150,000 for community liaison services." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. "She's being paid to force us out. The timeline shows they need your property within the next 4 months to maintain their financing deadlines. Your house sits at the geographical center of the development. Without it, the entire project collapses." Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Emergency at oncology clinic. Can you come now?" His blood went cold. "I have to go. Can you email me copies of everything you showed me? I can't officially release these documents, but..." Hoffman glanced around the empty office. Sometimes files get accidentally copied to the wrong email address. 20 minutes later, Marcus burst into the oncology clinic waiting room to find Sarah sitting in a chair, her face pale but determined. Dr. Martinez was beside her, his expression carefully neutral. "What's wrong?" Marcus asked, reaching for Sarah's hand. "The insurance company rejected coverage for the next round of treatment," Sarah said quietly. "They're calling it experimental therapy, not covered under our policy." Dr. Martinez nodded grimly. "The treatment has shown excellent results in clinical trials. But because it's relatively new, many insurance companies are reluctant to cover it." "How much?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer would be devastating. $12,000 per cycle. Mrs. Chen needs at least 4 cycles, $48,000. Marcus felt the number like a physical blow. Even with the savings from the solar panels, they didn't have that kind of money. "There might be payment plans," Dr. Martinez continued, "or clinical trials that would cover the cost. But the waiting lists are long, and Mrs. Chen's condition is progressing faster than we'd hoped." Sarah squeezed Marcus's hand. "We'll figure. We always do." But as they drove home, Marcus's mind raced with horrible calculations. The insurance rejection wasn't coincidence, it was timing. Someone had known about Sarah's treatment schedule, known about their financial vulnerability, and use that knowledge to maximize pressure. His phone rang. David Reeves. Marcus, where are you? Driving home from the hospital? Why don't go home? Meet me at the Starbucks on Route 15. Now, what's wrong? I've been monitoring HOA communications. There's a crew scheduled to remove your panels this afternoon. They're calling it an emergency safety intervention. Marcus's vision blurred. With rage, they can't do that. I have 48 hours. They're claiming new evidence of safety violations. Mrs. Vance filed an emergency injunction with the county this morning. On what grounds? A fender bender on Pine Street this morning. Driver claims he was blinded by glare from your panels. Marcus almost dropped the phone. That's impossible. The panels face south. Pine Street is north of my house. I know, but the driver filed a police report, and Mrs. Vance is using it to claim imminent public danger. Sarah was staring at him with growing alarm. Marcus, what's happening? They're trying to steal our house, he said simply. And they're using your cancer to do it. The Starbucks was nearly empty at 2:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. Reeves sat in a corner. Booth, his laptop open, surrounded by documents and coffee cups. His expression was darker than Marcus had ever seen it. Tell me you have good news, Marcus said, as he and Sarah sat down. I have news. Whether it's good depends on how you define winning. Reeves turned his laptop screen toward them. I've been investigating Meridian Development LLC. On paper, it's a legitimate development company based in Philadelphia. But dig deeper, and you find some interesting connections. The screen showed a complex web of corporate relationships, shell companies, and financial transactions. The majority investor in Meridian Development is Richard Blackwood, Sarah gasped. The management company representative, the same. But here's where it gets interesting. Blackwood doesn't just represent Pinnacle Property Management. He owns it, and Pinnacle Property Management has contracts with HOAs in 12 different communities across 3 counties, all of them facing development pressure. Marcus asked. All of them, and in every case, the pattern is the same. Blackwood's company takes over HOA management, retroactively changes rules, identifies resistant homeowners, and systematically harasses them until they sell. He's done this 17 times in the past 5 years. Marcus felt a mix of vindication and horror. So we can expose him. It's not that simple. Technically, nothing he's doing is illegal. HOAs have broad authority to interpret their governing documents. Property owners have the right to sell to whomever they choose. Development companies have the right to buy properties and propose new developments. But the false testimony, the fabricated complaints, are civil matters, not criminal ones. We could file lawsuits, but that takes years and costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. Money I'm guessing you don't have. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. So we're trapped. Not necessarily. Reeves pulled out a thick folder. I've been documenting everything: the false HOA meeting, the backdated complaints, the insurance company's convenient rejection of your wife's treatment coverage. What do you mean, convenient? Marcus, your insurance company is owned by Meridian Financial Group, same parent company as Meridian Development. They knew exactly when to reject your wife's treatment to maximize financial pressure. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that Marcus couldn't speak. They hadn't just been fighting an HOA dispute, they'd been fighting a coordinated corporate assault designed to destroy their family. There's more, Reeves continued. I found communications between Mrs. Vance and Blackwood discussing your wife's medical condition, your financial situation, even your children's school schedules. They've been surveilling your family for months. Sarah's face was white with anger. They used my cancer against us. They used everything against you. But here's the thing: surveillance requires warrants when it's done to this extent. Corporate espionage laws apply when companies use private information to manipulate financial decisions. And when insurance companies deny coverage based on development timelines rather than medical necessity, that's fraud. Marcus felt a spark of hope. So we can fight back. We can, but not through the HOA system. We need to go to the FBI. Corporate conspiracy, wire fraud, insurance fraud, violation of privacy laws. This is a federal case. But I need you to understand something. Going up against a $47 million development project means going up against people who have everything to lose. As if summoned by his words, Marcus's phone rang. Unknown number. Don't answer it. Reeve said, "but put it on speaker." Marcus accepted the call. Richard Blackwood's smooth voice filled the space between them. "Mr. Chen, this is Richard Blackwood. I understand you had some concerns about today's proceedings. You could say that. I'd like to propose a solution that benefits everyone. Meridian Development is prepared to offer you $750,000 for your property. That's nearly double the current market value." Sarah's eyes widened. It was enough to pay for her treatment, college funds for the kids, and a down payment on a new home. "In exchange for what?" Marcus asked. "A simple quitclaim deed and a non-disc agreement. You keep your solar panels. We'll even pay to have them professionally removed and reinstalled at your new location. And if I refuse," Blackwood